Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and thank you for joining us today. I want to talk to you from a book that I've been reading over the past month. It's called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. It's by Peter Scazzero. He is a pastor, and it's just a really, really great book. It's one that I can only read about 10 or 15 pages of, and then I've got to kind of process it and think and pray on it for a couple of days and pick it back up. But it's really just spoke to me. I did a program on a couple weeks ago, and I just recently read a chapter that really spoke to me. I want to share with you, but the one quote that I love that Peter kind of bases as a premise over this whole book, until you get this right, you can't be emotionally healthy and have spirituality. He says, it's impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature. I want to say that one more time. It's impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature. And I see so many people that haven't dealt with emotional wounds, and it carries over into all areas of our life. And God's really speaking to me about that a lot, my own life, and several other friends that I've talked to are kind of doing some self-inventory too about their emotional maturity. And, maturity is not just a number. Just because you may be 52 doesn't mean that you're necessarily emotionally mature, because we're really good, especially in America here, of wearing our mask. And as long as we've got, nice clothes to wear, a good car to drive, and money in our bank account, maybe live in the so-called right neighborhood, then, we look on the outside like we're really mature and doing well, because that's what the world tells us is success and maturity. But actually, some of the people that have some of the nicest, quote, toys this world has to offer are some of the people that are in the most emotional pain. And they try to stuff that pain down by buying things or by drugs and alcohol. And also people that struggle so much financially, that are in a lot of pain. Sometimes it's could be because of emotional wounds suffered as a child that they never have dealt with. And I just want to encourage you today that, if you're hurting inside, to seek a counselor. If you need reference to finding a counselor, contact me here. You can email me at greg@hopeishere.today, Greg at hopeishere.today, or send me a private message on our Facebook page, which is simply Hope is Here. But I want to talk to you today. Our program's going to be based on having what's a biblical Sabbath. When you hear that word, biblical Sabbath, you always think about in first book of the Bible, Genesis, where the Bible says that God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh he rested. And yet, other than the people at Chick-fil-A, I don't know many of us that have a Sabbath. Of course, I make the joke that Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays, and I say the joke, it's not, but it is, because they can have a true Sabbath for all their workers. Everybody knows one day off they're going to have, and that's Sundays. And obviously they've been very, very successful with over 500 Chick-fil-A's. They could be over 1,000 by now, but last time I looked a few years ago, it was over 500 Chick-fil-A's in the United States. And but to have a biblical Sabbath, we've got to realize that God worked and we are to work, but God rested and we are to rest. And it's one of those things that here in our country, the United States, that we're in a world that it's trying to prove its worth and value by what it does or it possesses. And, we are deeply loved by God, though, for who we are, not for what we do. I want to repeat that again. This is out of page 165 in Pete Scazzero's book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. We have been called out of a world trying to prove its worth and value by what it does or possesses. But as followers of Jesus, we are deeply loved by God for who we are, not for what we do. And I must admit to you, as a man, that I struggle with that. I'm a type A personality, and I'm about getting things done. And I've worked 3 or 4 jobs at different times in my life. And even when I was in full-time ministry, really struggle with my day off, because there's always ministry to be done. And I've had to apologize to God for not trusting him to take care of things, and for being too much of a people pleaser and being afraid to tell somebody, I'm sorry, I can't do that today. If it wasn't an emergency, it might have been a good thing, but I did not honor practicing the Sabbath. And you say, well, what is the Sabbath, Greg? Well, the Sabbath calls us to build the doing of nothing into our schedules each week. Nothing measurable is accomplished. By the world standards, it's inefficient, it's unproductive, and it's useless. As one theologian said, to fail to see the value of simply being with God and doing nothing is to miss the heart of Christianity. Man, I love that quote in this book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. To fail and see what the value of simply being with God and doing nothing is to miss the heart of Christianity. You know, when we do observe the Sabbath, we affirm God is the center and source of our lives. He is the beginning, the middle, and the end of our existence. We trust God to provide and care for us. Eugene Peterson, who wrote the Message Bible, points out, even though the Sabbath has been one of the most abused and distorted practices of the Christian life, we cannot do without it. Eugene Peterson says, the Sabbath is not primarily about us or how it benefits us. It is about God and how God forms us. I don't see any way out of it. If we are going to live appropriately in the creation, we must keep the Sabbath. And so I know for some of you today, you're just like, the Sabbath is like a dirty word, and it's like profanity. It's not a 4-letter word, but you're like, goodness, I know that, and I say I'm going to practice the Sabbath, but I just don't do it. And God's really challenged me in this area over the past month in my own life, and I'm trying to see if I can do that. And I just want to share, in the short time we have left remaining, 4 principles of biblical Sabbath that Pete Scazzero talks about in his book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. The first one, it's kind of simple, but it's hard for us to do a lot of times as Americans, is to simply stop. Sabbath is the first and foremost, it is a day of stopping. To stop is built into the literal meaning of the Hebrew word Sabbath, yet most of us can't stop until we are finished with whatever it is we think we need to do. We need to complete our projects and term papers, answer our emails, return all our phone messages, complete the balancing of our checkbook to pay our bills, finish cleaning the house. There's always one more goal to be reached before stopping. But on the Sabbath, we embrace our limits. God is God. God is indispensable. I am his creature. The world will continue working fine when I stop. I think that is so powerful. God is indispensable. I am his creature. The world continues working fine when I stop. You know, some of us, I've been that way, have a God complex where we feel like, man, if we don't show up or we don't do something, it's just not going to get done, or nobody else will do it, and the world can't continue its rotation. It'll fall off its axis, and man, that's just a lie from Satan. We stop on Sabbath, Scazzero tells us in Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, because God is on the throne, assuring us the world will not fall apart, even if we cease our activities. And you know what? One day we're all going to die, and when we die, there will be countless unfinished projects and goals. And that's okay. God is at work taking care of the universe. He manages quite well without having us to run things. When we are sleeping, he is working. So God commands us to relax, to enjoy the fact that we are not in charge of this world, that even when we die, the world will continue on nicely without us. Every Sabbath reminds us to be still and know that he is God, which is Psalm 46:10, one of my favorite verses. And to stop worrying about tomorrow, because tomorrow will take care of itself, which is in Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. The core spiritual issue in stopping, if we're really honest, it just revolves around the word trust. Will God take care of us and our concerns if we obey him by stopping to keep the Sabbath? You know, when we trust God and we obey his commands, he provides. Jesus takes our loaves and fishes that we offer him, even though they are insufficient to feed the multitudes, and somehow he miraculously and invisibly multiplies them. We can trust God enough to stop out of our busy lives. A second principle to having a biblical Sabbath is you got to rest. Once we stop, which was point number 1, the first principle, the Sabbath calls us to rest. It said, as we talked about earlier, God rested after his work, and we're to do the same. He did it every seventh day, which was in Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. So what do we do to replace all that we are now stopping during our Sabbath time? The answer is real simple. Whatever delights and replenishes you. I know you think that's a trick statement, but it's not. What do we do now that we're going to rest since we've stopped? You can do whatever delights and replenishes you. One of the things that I love that Peter Scazzero talks about is he says, you know what? There's lots of things I got to do, but I do those a different day of the week, not on the Sabbath, such as, paying bills, balancing the checkbook, cleaning the house, fighting traffic, doing loads of laundry. There's so many different things, but you just do whatever you want to do when you stop and rest. It's okay to do that and rest, and that is the second principle of having a biblical Sabbath. A lot of you say, well, I don't deserve a Sabbath. Well, God says that you do, and really, when we stop and rest, we respect humanity and the image of God in us. We are not nonstop human beings. Sadly, it often takes a physical illness, such as a cancer, diagnosed with cancer, a heart attack, the flu, or a severe depression to get us to rest. We don't serve the Sabbath. The Sabbath serves us. All right, so we've talked about to have a biblical Sabbath, you've got to stop. Then, once you stopped, you got to rest. The third thing is you've got to delight. A third component to biblical Sabbath revolves around us delighting in what we have been given. It says God, after finishing his work of creation, proclaimed that it was very good in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. On Sabbath, we are called to enjoy and delight in creation and its gifts. We are to slow down and pay attention to our food, smelling and tasting its riches. We are to take time to see the beauty of a tree, a leaf, a flower, especially now that spring is here. In fact, William Blake wrote, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. I love that. On Sabbath, God also invites us to slow down, to pay attention and delight just in people. To actually have conversations, to look people in their eyes and really hear what they're doing and put our phones down. All right, the fourth and final thing that Scazzero suggests that we have to do after stopping, resting, and delighting to have a biblical Sabbath is to contemplate. The final quality is contemplation, and the Sabbath is always holy according to the Lord. Exodus 31, chapter 15, verse 15 tells us, pondering the love of God remains the central focus of our Sabbaths. As we stop, rest, and delight, we all need to prepare in advance on how we're going to do this. You've got to make a plan. You got to be intentional about this. I mean, for some of you, it might even be what time do you need to go to bed the night before when you're getting ready to have a Sabbath. What's a final item that you need to resolve so you can have an uncluttered Sabbath? The fact of the matter is that make a plan, follow it for 1 or 2 months, then reflect back on what changes you would like to make. There is no one right way that works for every person. The Sabbath is like receiving the gift of heavy snow, a heavy snow day every week. Stores are closed, roads are impossible, schools are closed. Suddenly you have a gift of a day to do whatever you want. You don't have any obligations, pressure, or responsibilities. You have permission to play, be with friends, take a nap, read a good book. Few of us would give ourselves a no-obligation day like this very often, but God wants to give you one every seventh day. Well, I hope you'll follow these 4 principles to have a biblical Sabbath. It's from the outstanding book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Pete Scazzero. My name is Greg Horn, and you've been listening to Hope is Here. If you missed this or any of our other programs, be sure to catch us on our website at hopeishere.today. Let's be honest. Medicare can be really confusing. Scott County resident Jason Biddle has over 17 years helping seniors and retirees with issues surrounding Medicare, health care, and Social Security. Don't give yourself a headache. Contact Jason Biddle today with any insurance questions you have related to Medicare, health care, and Social Security. Contact Jason today for help at 502-395-1603. That's 502-395-1603.
CMI is your full-service human resources provider in Central Kentucky. For 15 years, CMI Human Resources has taken great pride in helping organizations and people work. Whether it's employee handbooks or help in filling a position, no job is too large or too small for CMI. Contact the professionals today at CMI Human Resources, 859-296-2800, or online at cmiconsulting.com.